Welcome back to the continuing conversation between myself and Marie Ysais on the canonical situation.
Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through some specific points in the write-up on the analysis of what is happening and why we see the canonical as the attribution portion of the canonical is being broken.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I'd like to talk about some things that we would not recommend people doing because either A, it is just a waste of time. B, it can poison other pages. Or C, it's just a temporary stopgap. So, Marie, what's your favorite of all those three? Which one do you love to tell people not to do?
Um, Probably one of my favorite is not to just take all of your same content and move it over to another domain, even if it's high authority,
Marie,
even if it's low authority, even if it's brand new. If you have problems on your site, you are just transferring your problems to the next domain, and it's only a matter of time before they catch back up.
so you're saying that the problem is the content on that old domain.
Yeah, whatever you
Oh,
did on that old domain and you transfer it to a new one, if you haven't figured out what that problem is or fixed it, you're going to get caught back up. Now, you'll have a small period of time where you feel all of the glory that you've made the correct decision, but that period of time will run out and you'll be back to where you're at right now.
right. So fast forward to the inevitable and just cool your jets.
Yeah, I think it's a waste of time and a waste of resources, but hey, if you want to try it, knock yourself out. I've seen it. I've seen a ton of people doing it. I've looked at those domains. They've had me look at it when it's hit yet again. So if there's a reason Google is not favoring or suppressing your site, however we want to say it, and you just transfer it to a new domain, or maybe an old domain that has been gathering dust that you love, you're just transferring your problems over.
And I think, going back to how the helpful content system tags unhelpful content, that if you get it tagged and you move it, you might create, because that domain is now unclassified, right? They have to learn all about your content again. So there you are. It's
Yeah.
just that's why it's inevitable. I think my favorite is, and this comes from out of the indexation stuff, is that
Mhm.
a lot of people, when they have trouble getting content indexed, and again, as you know, I believe that has to do with that topical radius on their site,
Mhm.
that they think by changing the URL, they can get it indexed. And very often it does, but what that does is it creates a brand new page. So we go back again to that leaked document where they confirm how they store all their information and that every page has a history,
Mhm.
and they keep lots of versions of it, up to 20, and there is no deleting that old stuff. So when people, I think when they say, "Oh, I'd like to change my domain," just not related to this, but like they've invested a lot of time and energy in their domain, and then they're like, "Oh, I like this other one better." It's like, don't do that because now you're creating all new pages that have to generate all that history again.
Mhm.
And it's just, again, it's just how do you want to spend your resources, right? How do you want to run your business?
Right,
So,
right.
so those two are not good, but this is my particular favorite because I kind of like to call it a poison arrow. Is that if you let's say your site is dragged down and you lost this page and you're thinking, well, maybe I could just forward this over to this other page, which is kind of sort of on the same topic.
Mhm.
And I know we've talked about that because we've seen that. What
Right,
happens at that point? I mean, it's truly like not a good idea,
right.
but it is, people I think are looking for things to do. So I just wanted to make sure that we can guide people to say, this may not be the best use of your time or your money.
Yeah, for sure.
So, okay, so to the PDF. I think we were talking just a little bit about this, but like, the implications on if the based as, looking at it, the question becomes, what would explain this?
Right.
We see behavior, that we don't like, right? We're not, we wish it were different.
Yeah, oh,
And
yeah,
then
every day.
totally, yes. And so like what would cause this? And each time the answer was it had to have been the canonical attribution was not working. And so it was kind of like, if everybody who gets this PDF, they're going to see this, but we talked about, duplicate content, obviously not desirable. When it's not attributing all the juice from the jump links to the canonical, and here talked about diluted ranking signals, right? So instead of that page getting that full juicy power, it's divided up and may not be strong enough in those other queries, collections of queries,
Right.
keywords that they may rank for, but not very well. And then of course, potential SEO penalties. And I
Right.
think this is where it ties in. Before helpful content, it was never good, right?
Right.
If you didn't set your canonical and you had all
Right.
these
It was not a
URLs.
good, right. It was not a good thing. It's something we would
Yeah,
check when a site was in trouble. It's, at the top of the list of items to check.
right. But I think in the helpful content environment, it's existential.
Yeah, I think it's well, it'll kill your site. But
Right.
yeah, I mean it's moved up in importance. How about that?
Right. Yeah.
It's
And I think,
the
it's
weight of it.
outside of, yeah. And like what we're talking about is we're not saying we think it's existential. We see it being existential in the data.
Right. So let me phrase it like this for if anyone out there that's a Debbie Downer or a Debbie Doubter, let me clear something up. It's not that I saw this on one site, it's that I saw it across many sites, many sites. I also did a lot of testing across those sites, trying to bring them back. We looked for patterns. We did everything we know to do. So we're not saying this because I saw it one time or you saw it one time. We've seen it multiple times, time and time again, and it's actually on sites that I'm working on. So not only are we seeing it, measuring it, we're also making changes, measuring the changes, and then continuing to move forward from there. So it's not that we're saying this as if it just happened yesterday. We actually started seeing this a long time ago, but we didn't even know how to talk about it because it was such new behavior. In fact, I can remember many of our phone calls going back and forth because even when I was seeing it for the first time, I didn't believe it. I was like, this can't be. Google takes care of this.
Right.
But how did we know? Well, the sites tanked. The site stopped making, instead of making $20,000 a month, they started making $500 a month. Traffic was completely plummeted. So there's multiple levels of checking. So if you think that maybe GSC is just broken, then somehow all of the money stopped coming into the sites. So there were multiple issues that we looked at. Then we had to strain it all down because when I first saw it, I didn't believe any of it. I was like, this is not normal.
Aberrant behavior.
Yes, it was. So what I'm trying to say is we've looked at this for a really long time. It's just that we're currently speaking on it because we currently can understand behavior a lot better after looking at tons of sites and working on tons of sites. That's why we're bringing it to you now. So I just wanted to get that out of the way in case someone thinks we saw it one time or
Right.
maybe on someone else's site. We brought it to everyone's attention because we believe it's that important.
Right. And I can't stress the fact that, we were looking at this and like you say, it's like it never crossed my mind to think it was a broken system,
Yeah.
right? Because we're so trained to think that if there's an error, it's operator error and never Google.
Yes. Yes.
And that has informed that possibility has informed my work over the last almost 3 years, that I'm going to probably coming at it unusually with the possibility that Google is broken. Again, not because don't want to take responsibility for things, but it's like at some point you have to know whose responsibility is what and take appropriate responsibility. And this is not appropriate for site owners or content writers to take responsibility for if the system is broken.
Yes. And
So,
we've seen that play out before. We've
yep.
seen people lose jobs over something that was Google's fault. So
Yes.
that's why we felt it was so important to speak on it and talk about it. And it's not that we just saw it yesterday and we had a like half of a minute phone call. We've actually been debating this for a really long time.
Very spiritedly so.
Yes.
So let's talk just so people understand like what's normal behavior of these types of links. Um, and we kind of like put it into like what are the normal conditions, right? So people are going to see them in the search console under normal Google working Google system. You're going
Mhm.
to see them in there. But the difference between how they used to be and how they are is more in how they're behaving, in that they're collecting impressions, like crazy
A lot
number
of
of
impressions.
impressions.
Yeah. Very large amounts of impressions, but very few clicks.
Right.
That was the first red flag that I saw, because if you see this under any other circumstance, that's not good behavior.
Right. You'd say, what's wrong with my page?
Yeah.
Like if it was a regular page.
Yeah.
So yeah. And anyway, I also don't think that we would have seen them getting clicks out of the SERPs, right? These are supposed to be found on the page, and people like in your analytics, you might see the click on that and then it'll pull the whole thing. But to see it before somebody's even clicked, that just was weird. It was just weird.
Gaining,
And like you
gaining
say, did
hundreds, hundreds of impressions,
thousands of
thousands.
impressions.
And
And
the other behavior that was strange was when they started outranking the main page.
oh, right,
That was a
right,
new behavior as well. They shouldn't be outranking your page that you've dedicated to that particular term. They shouldn't be taking up all of the impressions. And another new behavior is you shouldn't see your main page plummet down.
right.
That was also new behavior.
Yeah. And again, like you say, we struggled with like how to describe this. And again, the only conclusion that makes logical sense at this point in time, based on what we know, is the attribution is that whatever they call that, whatever system that is, whatever hard drive that's on, that is not working. So, so further on in the document, we talked about some outside things that were happening that might have contributed, because we're curious people and we want to know. This probably didn't just happen yesterday.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that we talked about was when they retired that URL parameter tool in
Mhm.
the old Google Webmaster portion of Search Console.
Yes.
And that was announced, and I guess early 2022. And they pretty much removed it April 26, 2022. And that was in there for a reason, because they knew Google had a problem separating out these parameters in the URLs, because they also knew duplicate content was not helpful to for them to score that site, right? So that's one character, one possibility, I guess, where the system might have had a little, right?
Right, right. And I recall us tracing that parameter tool back because I first noticed this behavior in 2023, and we were curious as to what could have changed or shifted prior to that period. Because like I said, this was new behavior. These were sites that had table of contents for years, couple years, 2, 3 years, never had that big of a problem. They just were not looking the way that we are currently seeing them. The shift was sometime in 2023 with the sites that I work on.
Yeah, and that first helpful content update rolled out in the summer of 2022, and I don't think we saw a lot of changes. I think that was like a learning expedition
Yeah,
on that.
it
And
wasn't
then,
until later that we fully felt the
right,
brunt of the force.
the burn. And then we noticed that they in early 2023 they did a lot of updating on the documentation about
Yes.
canonicals.
Yeah. So at the time of all of this, I suspected there was some type of problem, but I had no idea what the problem was. I just
Right.
knew behavior wasn't right. Behavior was different. There was a problem somewhere. I was following the threads of Twitter, Reddit, you name it, where they were saying, if you don't have the canonical declared, you're in trouble, or these things have to happen. Come on, website owners. And
Right.
I went back and thought, is that the problem? Is there a problem with the canonical? Not that I thought anything was broken. I thought, are the SEO plugins messing up
Mm.
and took out all of our canonicals while we were sleeping? And so I went down that road. I checked the plugins all across all the sites. Do they have the same plugin? Are the canonicals actually there? I went and visibly started checking with my eyes because I knew there had to be a reason they were mentioning the canonical as much as they were. I mean, they did a quick Twitter thread, and then they felt compelled to do a Reddit thread where
Right.
Reddit was even like throwing them out of Reddit because it was just so much drama around the canonical. There was just something there.
Well, and that does lend, to this little tinfoil hat conspiracy thing, because the question is, do they know? Um,
Yeah, I mean,
and
did they
and
know? Did they find
and
out
it
later?
right, and there could be somebody that it's like, I hope nobody would notice.
You know, there's a
But
million possibilities.
right, well, and that the Twitter conversation you're referencing, the one from Danny Sullivan,
Hmm.
where he said that weird table of content things shoved at the top.
Yes.
And for years we've used that as a way to make it easier, for the visitor
To
who
the
might
end
want to,
user, yeah,
right, the user.
because we have 10,000 words on a page. When I'm trying to get to the recipe, I need to jump link to that recipe. We were using it
Thank
for
you.
users. Danny
Thank you.
Sullivan took it upon himself to say, it's not helping you rank if that's what you think it's doing. So
Well,
honestly,
that's the sure thing. It's not helping you rank.
it's not helping you rank. It surely isn't.
So anyway, I guess that kind of brings us, people can download the PDF where you can see actual URLs that were compared and contrasted, the canonical to the collection of the jump links. You can see for yourself. If you're trying to use Search Console, and let's say you find a URL with a fragment in it and you throw it in the URL inspection tool, please understand you're not going to be able to know the history of that URL, because a lot of them have been removed from the data. And I think the whole idea is, as we're like kind of tying this up, is that not being able to see something now does not mean that something isn't there. And again, that's reinforced by that Google leak that they keep that history. So just because we can't see it in Search Console, until you go back farther enough, you're going to find it in the run of the data, right? Which you can export,
Oh,
but
yeah.
you're not going to find a status necessarily of that in the SERP today, which is the only thing that that inspection, URL inspection, can do. It just shows you what's there in the moment that you ask.
Right. And I can tell you what it looked like when I ran it through myself, when I was going
Yeah.
through all of this. It would just say that it wasn't indexed. It's not
Right.
indexed. This is not indexed. And I thought, great, it's not indexed, but why is it ranking so well?
It's like, good question, Marie.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, so I think the takeaway here is, if everybody's like wondering like why, I don't see that. I think a lot of the advantage here is that both of us see a lot of sites, and
Yeah.
there's no substitute for seeing sites of every kind of condition, right? We're not
Right. Right.
looking at pristine sites.
No, I mean, in any condition, we see all types of things. And, if you don't see it, or maybe you've never used the table of contents, it doesn't mean you wouldn't have been hit by helpful content system update, whatever we're calling it now. It doesn't mean that you weren't hit. It just means you didn't have the table of contents issue.
Right.
So
Right.
there's a
And
lot going on, and I know it's really confusing for people, but think of it in multiple layers. It's not one thing always taking down a site. A lot of times when we talk about updates, a lot of us that talk about it are not in the field working. And we try to say this update was about this, and we pinpoint like one or two things. I have never seen an update that was only about one or two things.
right. Well, and I think it stems from everybody wanting to help, and
Oh, yeah.
share and lend their insight. And none of us are doing that, but I think it can't stack up against a wider lens, a more complete view, because it's like anything else, where you sit in the stadium matters.
It does. It does. And honestly, with this one, I think I got lucky because of the sites that I happened to be monitoring, and I happened to notice right away. So I was able to get on it and start processing because there was a
Mhm.
lot to process.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, we had many phone calls trying to process between us what we were seeing and what was actually going on, because it was just such new behavior, and I did not have it into my realm of thinking that Google was possibly broken or ever could be broken. I just felt we were bad SEOs, and like Google
So
was trying to
glad we're
tell
hanging out
us.
together now, because
I
now you
know,
know.
I know. And I'm like, well, what did we do wrong this time, guys? Let's,
Uh,
rein it back in. But no, all joking aside, it was not in my realm. When I looked at it, I honestly just thought there was a problem on the site. So I attacked it from that angle. And when I could not clear it whatsoever, I then I had to start looking outside of that box.
Well, and I think that speaks to, currently in this environment, uh, you really have to up your skills. You have to, what do you call it? Level up.
Yeah, we have to level up. I wish we didn't have to level up as much as we've had to level up, because I think
Yeah.
I refer to the good old days a lot.
Yes.
But I've definitely had to level up, and the problems that I'm seeing are more consistent and hitting more and more sites. I'm now seeing a lot of more local sites coming in that I have not seen before. And it's not just affiliate, it's not just e-com. I know sometimes we create an e-com site thinking we'll never have the problems of an affiliate site, but that's really not true.
Right.
So you
And,
have to level up.
they were some of the first to really start to scream about, once helpful content started getting a little
Yes.
stricter. And I think that, when we know what are characteristics of different types of businesses, hindsight being 2020, a lot of those folks, I think, used jump links and things like that, with the table of contents and in other ways. And we've seen that in the languages.
Mhm.
There's very likely even the possibility, I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to say it just in case. Depending on how your frequently asked questions are coded,
Mhm.
if you're using those in that way, take a look. What's the harm in taking a look?
Right.
And again, go back 16 months. Do not use the defaulted 3 months when you go into Search Console.
I'll tell
That's
you
kind of
another,
like,
I'll tell you another place that I've seen it recently that was concerning. It's in WordPress. When you allow people to make comments, those
mm,
comments are fragmented URLs. And I wasn't expecting that one. So I think there's more fragments than we know or have paid attention to. And now I'm on high alert about where are they and what are they doing and what does it look like to Google at this point?
I mean, it almost sounds like we really need to post every day with the hashtag fix the damn canonical, because it's probably not going to get any easier to deal with.
No,
So
I think there's no quick uh solution here. I think they're working on it, but I could be wrong because no one called me to say, hey, Marie, we're working on this right now. But I
right.
think they're setting us up
Yeah.
for something that's coming. And to me, that signals they might be working on it.
I think we've all had teenage kids who trying to pull the wool over, over their parents' eyes.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of like, oh, look at that. I don't know how that got there.
Yes.
So yeah, and we'll know about it again, like I said before, we'll know about it when we see it in the data.
Yeah.
And so at this point, I think it's just really, let's accept responsibility for what's ours, and let's encourage Google to take responsibility for what
What's
is
theirs?
theirs.
Yes.
And I think letting them know that we know it now, because to my ear, I have not heard anybody say this. Have you?
No, no, I
Okay.
haven't heard, there's no one talking about it. And in fact, when we talk about it, they're like, no, it can't be. So I don't
Right.
think people have thought outside of the possibility of just what's going on the site. Is Google actually doing the job that they say they are doing? And sometimes they do not. It's just common knowledge. Sometimes it happens. It doesn't happen a lot or a whole bunch, but when it
Well,
does
I think
happen,
it's hard to tease it out, right? And
oh,
it's hard to
yeah,
know. And that's where the data really helps, right?
yeah.
Because it's not opinion. It's not like I'm mad at Google, because I didn't get what I want. It's like, oh my gosh, my jump links are indexing as separate pages and they're not helping each other.
But
So I think,
yeah, but Search Council says they're not indexed, so they must not be.
right. Well, and again, I think that does speak up to that power up aspect to this, that I think, like you say, forensically and site recovery, these are going to get bigger and bigger
Oh yeah,
as we move forward.
oh yeah.
So
And
and
now
it's,
I'm seeing it bigger and bigger and local,
yep.
which I said a year and a half ago, and everyone thought I was crazy. But I think we're gonna get hit with this across all of the sites eventually. So we need to learn what it is, what it looks like, and how we deal with it.
Amen. All right. Well, Marie, thank you for today. I know we're going to talk more. I'm going to put the links to the PDF in the description, Marie's course that she's interrupted launching to come here again. And then also, if you want to stay on the information list for search driven insights, you'll have the opportunity
Yes.
to do that as well.
Yeah.
So, Marie, thank you. Have a great weekend.
Yes. Have a good weekend. We can stop thinking about Google for a
I
second.
know, just for one hot minute. Okay.
One hot minute. All right. Bye.
Bye.